He didn't scream. He didn't throw a punch. He didn't even raise his voice. When the flight attendant snatched the boarding pass from his hand and pointed toward the aircraft door, Adrian Caldwell simply adjusted his glasses and asked one question. "Are you absolutely sure you want to do this?" She laughed in his face. She didn't realize that by kicking the man in the hoodie off the plane, she wasn't just delaying a flight. She was ending her career. In the next 30 minutes, a VIP cabin would turn into a war zone, a pretentious billionaire would lose his empire, and an entire flight crew would be unemployed before the wheels even left the tarmac. This is the story of the quietest man in the room, holding the biggest stick. The rain was hammering against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Terminal 4 at JFK International Airport. It was one of those grey, miserable Tuesday evenings where everyone seemed to be running 20 minutes late and fueled entirely by stress and bad coffee. Adrian Caldwell pulled the hood of his charcoal grey sweatshirt further over his head. He wasn't hiding exactly, but he certainly wasn't advertising. At 38 years old, Adrian looked less like the majority shareholder of a Fortune 500 logistics firm and more like a tired graduate student surviving on ramen noodles. He had been awake for 48 hours straight, negotiating a merger in Tokyo before flying directly to New York, and now, finally, he was heading home to London. He was exhausted. His bones ached. The only thing keeping him upright was the promise of Seat 1A on Stratton Airways Flight 902. He had specifically booked the first-class suite, the one with the sliding privacy door and the lie-flat bed, so he could pass out the moment he sat down. He approached the gate, his backpack slung over one shoulder. The gate agent, a harried-looking man named Greg, barely glanced up as he scanned Adrian's digital boarding pass. The machine beeped a crisp, confirming green. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Caldwell," Greg mumbled, already looking past him to the line of impatient travelers behind. "Thanks," Adrian whispered, his voice raspy from disuse. He walked down the jet bridge, the cool, damp air of the tunnel hitting his face. He loved this part of travel, the transition, the moment you stepped off the solid ground and into the tube that would take you across the ocean. He stepped onto the plane, turning left toward the first-class cabin. The cabin was softly lit in calming hues of blue and violet. It smelled of expensive leather and champagne. There were only 8 suites in first class, and it was currently empty, save for a flight attendant adjusting a floral arrangement near the galley. Her name tag read Brenda. She was tall, with hair sprayed into an immovable blonde helmet and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She was currently busy arranging miniature bottles of sparkling water. Adrian found Seat 1A. He tossed his battered leather backpack into the overhead bin. It made a solid thud that seemed to echo in the quiet cabin and collapsed into the wide, plush seat. He didn't wait for a pre-departure drink. He didn't want a hot towel. He just fastened his seatbelt, pulled his noise-cancelling headphones over his ears, and closed his eyes. Finally. He was drifting into a micro-sleep when a sharp tap on his shoulder jolted him awake. Adrian peeled one ear cup back and blinked. Brenda was standing over him. Her hands were clasped in front of her, but her posture was rigid. "Sir," she said, her voice dripping with a saccharine sweetness that felt more like a warning. "I think you might be confused." Adrian frowned, rubbing his eyes. "I'm sorry." "This is the first-class cabin," Brenda said, articulating every syllable slowly, as if speaking to a child. "Economy is through the galley, past the lavatories, and all the way to the back." Adrian sighed. This wasn't the first time this had happened. He looked down at his attire, faded jeans, Nike sneakers, and the hoodie. He didn't look like the typical clientele of Stratton Airways' most exclusive cabin. "I know," Adrian said softly. "I'm in Seat 1A. I have my boarding pass if you need to see it again." He reached for his phone, but Brenda waved a hand dismissively. "Honey, the system sometimes makes mistakes with upgrades, or maybe you misread the number. But Seat 1A is reserved for our premium VIPs. We have a full flight today. If you have an economy ticket, you need to head back now before the aisles get clogged." Adrian felt a prickle of irritation. He unlocked his phone and held up the screen. "It's not an upgrade mistake, Brenda. I paid full fare. Adrian Caldwell, Seat 1A. Brenda leaned in, squinting at the screen without actually touching it. She pursed her lips. "Well, that is odd." Before she could continue, a loud, booming voice filled the cabin. "Brenda! Darling, tell me you have my usual ready on ice." Adrian turned his head. Striding into the cabin was a man who looked like he had been manufactured in a factory that built corporate villains. He was wearing a navy pinstripe suit that probably cost more than a Honda Civic. He had slicked back silver hair, a tan that was 3 shades too orange for winter, and he was dragging a Louis Vuitton carry-on. This was Preston Hargrave. Adrian recognized him instantly, not personally, but by reputation. Hargrave was a real estate mogul, known for building shoddy luxury condos and suing his own contractors to avoid paying them. He was a tabloid fixture, usually seen yelling at valets or dating women young enough to be his granddaughters. Brenda's face transformed instantly. The suspicion vanished, replaced by a beaming, obsequious adoration. "Mr. Hargrave," she squealed, rushing forward to take his coat. "It is always an honor. And yes, your scotch is already poured, just the way you like it." Hargrave grinned, revealing teeth that were blindingly white. "Excellent, excellent. Long week, Brenda. I need to recline and forget the world exists." Hargrave marched down the aisle, expecting the world to part for him. He stopped abruptly when he reached the front row. He looked at Seat 1A. Then he looked at Adrian. Hargrave's smile dropped. He looked at Adrian like one might look at a stain on a silk tie. "Brenda," Hargrave barked, not taking his eyes off Adrian. "Why is there a maintenance worker sitting in my seat?" Adrian stiffened. Maintenance worker. Brenda rushed to Hargrave's side, looking flushed. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Hargrave. I was just handling it. This gentleman seems to think he's assigned to this seat." "Think?" Hargrave scoffed. He stepped closer, invading Adrian's personal space. "Listen, pal. I don't know if you won a sweepstakes or used your miles or whatever, but 1A is my seat. I sit here on every flight to London. It's the only seat with the extra legroom for the bulkhead. So, up. Move." He made a shooing motion with his hand. Adrian didn't move. He kept his voice calm, though his heart rate was climbing. "I booked this seat 3 weeks ago, Mr. Hargrave. You're welcome to take 1B across the aisle. It's empty." Hargrave laughed, a dry, barking sound. 1B? I don't sit in 1B. I sit in 1A. And I don't negotiate with people who look like they sell counterfeit watches out of a trunk. He turned to Brenda. "Get him out of here, now, or I'm calling the CEO. You know I have his personal number." Brenda paled. The threat of calling the CEO was the ultimate weapon in the airline industry. She turned on Adrian, her face hardening into stone. "Sir," Brenda said, her voice losing all pretense of politeness, "I need to see your boarding pass again. Physical copy." "I used the app," Adrian said. "You saw it." "The app can be glitched," she snapped. "And quite frankly, your behavior is becoming disruptive to our premium guests. I need you to gather your things and wait in the galley while I sort this out." "I'm not moving," Adrian said, his voice dropping an octave. "I am a paying customer. I am sitting in my assigned seat. If Mr. Hargrave wants a seat, he can sit in the one assigned to him." "Disruptive?" Adrian repeated, incredulous. I haven't done anything but sit here." "You are arguing with crew members," Brenda said, raising her voice so the other passengers boarding behind them could hear. "And you are upsetting a Diamond Legacy flyer. Now stand up, or I will have to escalate this." Adrian looked at Brenda. He looked at Hargrave, who was checking his Rolex and looking bored. "Escalate it," Adrian said. "Please, I'd love to see where this goes." The tension in the first-class cabin was thick enough to choke on. Other passengers were filtering in now, a tech couple in row 2, an elderly woman in 2B, and they were all watching the spectacle with wide eyes. Brenda stormed toward the cockpit, her heels clicking aggressively against the floor. Hargrave leaned against the bulkhead, crossing his arms and smirking at Adrian. "You're making a mistake, kid," Hargrave said, his voice low and oily. "You think because you bought a ticket you have rights? In the real world, money talks, and look at you." He gestured vaguely at Adrian's hoodie. "You're whispering." "Clothes don't make the man, Hargrave," Adrian replied, putting his headphones back around his neck. "And manners don't cost a dime." "Cute," Hargrave spat. "I'm going to enjoy watching you walk back to row 45 near the toilets." A moment later, Brenda returned. She wasn't alone. She was accompanied by the chief purser, a stern man named Victor, and the co-pilot, First Officer Miller. Victor looked exhausted. He adjusted his tie and looked down at Adrian. "Sir, I'm the chief purser. Brenda tells me you're refusing to vacate a seat that isn't yours." "It is mine," Adrian said calmly. He held out his phone again. "Adrian Caldwell. Seat 1A. Confirmed. Paid." Victor glanced at the phone, then at a tablet in his hand. He tapped the screen a few times. His brow furrowed. "The manifest does list a Caldwell in 1A, Victor muttered, mostly to himself. "See?" Adrian said. "Problem solved." "However," Victor continued, his voice tightening as he glanced at Hargrave. Hargrave was glaring at him, tapping his foot impatiently. Victor knew who Hargrave was. Everyone at Stratton Airways knew Hargrave. He was a nightmare passenger, but he spent $500,000 a year with the airline. The unwritten rule was, Hargrave gets what Hargrave wants. Victor cleared his throat. "However, sir, the captain has authority over the seating arrangements for the safety and comfort of all passengers. Mr. Hargrave has a specific medical requirement for the bulkhead seat." "Medical requirement?" Adrian raised an eyebrow. "He just told me it's his lucky seat." "It's sciatica," Hargrave shouted, lying effortlessly. "And I don't have to explain my medical history to a nobody." Victor looked pained. He turned to Adrian. "Sir, look. We have a seat in business class. Row 12. It's a great seat. We will refund the difference in the ticket price, and I'll throw in a $500 travel voucher. But we need to resolve this now so we can depart. Please, just work with us." It was a reasonable offer to a normal person, but to Adrian, it wasn't about the seat anymore. It was about the principle. It was about the way Brenda had sneered at him. It was about the way Hargrave looked at him like he was garbage. "No," Adrian said firmly. "I paid for first class. I have a meeting in London that requires me to be well rested. I am staying here." Hargrave slammed his hand against the overhead bin. Bang! "That's it!" Hargrave yelled. "I'm not flying with this lunatic. He's aggressive. Did you see that? He's threatening me with his eyes. I don't feel safe." It was a performance worthy of an Oscar, and Brenda latched onto it immediately. "I saw it too," Brenda chimed in, stepping forward. "He's been hostile since he boarded. He refused to follow crew instructions. Captain, I don't feel comfortable having him in my cabin. He's a flight risk." First Officer Miller, who had been silent until now, stepped in. He was young, broad-shouldered, and clearly eager to assert some authority. He leaned over Adrian, using his height to intimidate. "Sir, the crew has determined you are a disturbance," Miller said, his voice hard. "Federal regulations state that you must comply with crew instructions. You are now being ordered to leave the aircraft." Adrian looked at them. The trinity of arrogance. Brenda the enabler, Hargrave the bully, and Miller the muscle. "You're kicking me off?" Adrian asked quietly. "Not just moving me. You're removing me from the flight." "You left us no choice," Brenda said, crossing her arms smugly. "We have a zero-tolerance policy for aggression." "I haven't raised my voice once," Adrian pointed out. "Your attitude is aggressive," Hargrave sneered. "Get him out of here so I can sit down." Adrian unbuckled his seatbelt. He stood up. He was taller than he looked while sitting down, 6'2", and for a split second, Hargrave took a step back. But Adrian didn't lunge. He simply reached into the overhead bin and pulled down his backpack. He looked at Victor, the chief purser. "Victor, write this down. I want you to remember this moment." "Sir, just go," Victor said, looking away, unable to meet Adrian's eyes. "I'm going," Adrian said. He stepped into the aisle. He stood face to face with Hargrave. "Enjoy the seat, Preston," Adrian said. "I hope it's worth it." Hargrave laughed. "Everything I get is worth it, pal. Go back to the bus station." Adrian walked toward the aircraft door. The walk of shame. The passengers in business and economy watched him pass, whispering. He saw a few phones raised, recording him. Great, he thought. I'm going to be viral on TikTok as the unruly passenger. He reached the front of the plane where the jet bridge connected. The gate agent, Greg, was standing there, looking confused. "They kicked you off?" Greg asked. "Yeah," Adrian said. He stopped in the threshold of the plane door. He turned back to Brenda, who was standing at the cockpit door, watching to make sure he left. "Brenda," Adrian called out. She rolled her eyes. "What now? Is the captain available? The actual captain?" "Captain Reynolds is busy preparing for flight," First Officer Miller snapped, stepping in front of Brenda. "Get off the bridge." "I'm not leaving the bridge until I speak to the captain," Adrian said, planting his feet. "You can call the police if you want. In fact, I insist you do. Call the Port Authority police." "Oh, you want the cops?" Brenda laughed. "Honey, you're going to leave in handcuffs. I love it." She grabbed the interphone handset on the wall. "Captain, we need security at the gate. The passenger is refusing to leave the jet bridge." Adrian waited. He took his phone out of his pocket. He didn't call a lawyer. He didn't call his mum. He opened his contacts and scrolled to a number saved simply as Raymond Stratton. Raymond Stratton, the founder and CEO of Stratton Airways. Adrian pressed call. Inside the plane, Hargrave had settled into seat 1A. He was already sipping the scotch Brenda had poured for him. He stretched his legs out, sighing in contentment. "Finally," Hargrave muttered to the empty air. "Some class." He had no idea that 10 yards away, on the cold metal of the jet bridge, the man in the hoodie was currently speaking to the man who owned the plane. "Ray?" Adrian said into the phone, his voice calm but icy. "It's Adrian." "Yes, Adrian Caldwell. I'm good. Listen, I'm currently at JFK. Your staff just kicked me off Flight 902. No, I'm not joking. Because a man named Preston Hargrave wanted my seat. Yes, that Preston Hargrave. Ray, I need you to do something for me. I need you to authorize an emergency personnel override. Yes, right now. And Ray, tell the airport station manager to meet me at the gate. I'm about to make some changes to your payroll." Adrian hung up the phone. He looked at Brenda, who was smirking at him from the galley. "Police are on their way," she sang out. "Good," Adrian smiled. It was the first time he had smiled all night. "They can be witnesses." The jet bridge was freezing. It was a suspended metal tunnel, poorly insulated against the New York winter. and the wind howled through the gap where it connected to the fuselage. Adrian leaned against the damp metal wall, his arms crossed over his chest. He wasn't shivering from the cold. He was vibrating with a cold, hard rage that he was fighting desperately to keep internal. Brenda stood 10 feet away, guarding the aircraft door like a bouncer at a nightclub. She was whispering furiously to the first officer, her eyes darting back to Adrian every few seconds. She looked triumphant. In her mind, she had won. She had protected the high-value client, Mr. Hargrave, and discarded the trash. "They're coming down the terminal now," Brenda announced loudly, making sure Adrian could hear. "Port Authority. I hope you like jail cells, honey." Adrian didn't respond. He just watched the rain streak against the small window of the jet bridge. He checked his watch. It had been 4 minutes since he hung up with Ray. "You're making this worse for yourself," the first officer, whose name Adrian recalled was Miller, said, stepping forward. He had that puffed-up chest posture of a man who desperately wanted to be a hero, but was just being a bully. "If you just walk away now, maybe we don't press charges for trespassing." "I'm not trespassing," Adrian said calmly. "I'm waiting for a resolution." "The resolution is you leaving," Miller shouted, his patience snapping. Suddenly, the heavy door from the terminal swung open. The sound of heavy boots echoed on the metal floor. 2 police officers walked onto the jet bridge. One was a burly man with a mustache named Officer Kowalski. The other was younger, sharper-looking, Officer Tate. They looked annoyed. Dealing with air rage was the bottom of the barrel for airport duty. "All right, what's the problem here?" Kowalski asked, his hand resting casually on his belt. Brenda immediately launched into her performance. She brought a hand to her chest, her voice trembling with fabricated fear. "Officer, thank God you're here. This man—" She pointed a manicured finger at Adrian. "He's been aggressive, threatening the crew, and he refused to leave the aircraft when ordered. We think he might be intoxicated. He's been stalking the first-class cabin." Kowalski turned his eyes to Adrian. He saw a black man in a hoodie, leaning against the wall, looking tired. Then he looked back at the pristine flight attendant. The bias was immediate, subconscious, and palpable. "Sir," Kowalski said, stepping into Adrian's space, "you need to grab your bag and come with us, now." "I haven't done anything wrong, officer," Adrian said, keeping his hands visible. "I was kicked off the flight because a VIP wanted my seat. I have a ticket." "I don't care about your ticket," Kowalski said, his voice hardening. "The airline wants you off. That means you're off. If you don't walk, I drag you. And if I drag you, you catch a charge for resisting. Your choice." "He threatened Mr. Hargrave," Brenda added, throwing fuel on the fire. "He said he was going to get him. We have witnesses." "That's a lie," Adrian said, his voice level. "Turn around," Kowalski commanded, reaching for his handcuffs. "You're under arrest for disorderly conduct and trespassing." Adrian felt the familiar sting of injustice. It didn't matter that he was a CEO. It didn't matter that he had 3 degrees. In this moment, on this bridge, he was just a suspect. He slowly turned around, preparing to be humiliated. Just as Kowalski's fingers brushed Adrian's wrist, the terminal door slammed open again. This time, it wasn't a cop. It was a woman in a sharp black blazer, running in heels, clutching a radio in one hand and a tablet in the other. Her hair was a mess, as if she had been running against the wind. Her lanyard identified her as Lydia Cross, the JFK station manager for Stratton Airways. "Stop!" Lydia screamed. Her voice cracked with panic. "Officer, stop!" Kowalski paused, the handcuffs dangling from one finger. "What? We got the guy!" Lydia Cross ignored the police. She ignored Brenda. She sprinted the last 10 feet and skidded to a halt in front of Adrian. She was out of breath, her chest heaving. She looked at Adrian's face, then at the photo on her tablet. Her face went pale white. "Oh my God," she whispered. She looked like she was about to be sick. "Ms. Cross?" Brenda asked, looking confused. "It's okay, we handled it. The police are taking him." Lydia spun around. Her eyes were blazing with a fury that made Brenda take a step back. "You handled it?" Lydia hissed. "You handled what exactly, Brenda? Did you handle the termination of your employment? Because that's about the only thing you've accomplished today." The silence on the jet bridge was absolute. Even the rain seemed to stop. "Excuse me." Brenda blinked. Lydia turned back to Adrian. She smoothed her jacket, her hands shaking visible. "Mr. Caldwell, sir, I am mortified. I literally just got the call from Raymond Stratton. He's on the line with the board of directors right now." Officer Kowalski looked between them, confused. "Ma'am, do you want this guy arrested or not?" "Arrested?" Lydia let out a high-pitched, hysterical laugh. "Officer, if you put cuffs on this man, Stratton Airways will likely cease to exist by tomorrow morning. Please, step back. Immediately." Kowalski took a large step back, sensing the shift in power. Adrian adjusted his glasses. He looked at Lydia Cross. "Ms. Cross, is it?" "Yes, sir. I'm the station manager." "Good," Adrian said. He pointed a thumb at the aircraft door. "I was sitting in seat 1A. A man named Preston Hargrave decided he wanted it. Brenda here, along with First Officer Miller, decided that my money wasn't green enough compared to his. They lied to the police. They defamed my character, and they publicly humiliated me." Lydia closed her eyes for a second, absorbing the disaster. "I need your tablet," Adrian said softly. Lydia handed it over without hesitation. Adrian tapped the screen, pulling up the internal flight manifest. He scrolled down. He wasn't just checking the passenger list. He was logging into the administrative back-end, access that Ray Stratton had granted him 10 minutes ago via a secure link. "Brenda," Adrian said, not looking up. "You've been with Stratton for 12 years. Brenda's lip quivered. "Yes." "How do you—" "And First Officer Miller," Adrian continued. "You're up for a promotion to captain next month. That's why you were posturing, trying to look tough for the boss." Miller stayed silent, his face draining of color. Adrian handed the tablet back to Lydia. "Ms. Cross, are you aware of the merger that was finalized in Tokyo yesterday?" "Yes, sir," Lydia said, her voice trembling. "The Caldwell Logistics Partnership." "It wasn't a partnership," Adrian corrected her. "It was an acquisition. My company, Caldwell Logistics, now owns the controlling interest in Stratton Airways' cargo and operational debt. Effectively, I own the planes, Miss Cross. I own the fuel, and I own the payroll." He turned to Brenda. Her mouth was hanging open. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a pure, distilling horror. You own the airline?" Brenda whispered. "I don't like to throw weight around," Adrian said, his voice cold. "I like to fly quietly. I like to wear hoodies because suits are uncomfortable. But you judged me. You looked at me and decided I was nothing. And because of that, you mistreated a customer." Adrian stepped closer to the aircraft door. "Ms. Cross," Adrian said, "I am declaring this flight crew unfit for duty due to gross misconduct and discriminatory practices. I want them removed, all of them, pilot included, because the captain allowed this to happen." "Sir," Miller stammered, "I was just following protocol." "Your protocol is to protect passengers, not bully them," Adrian snapped. "Miss Cross, remove them. Now. And get a reserve crew here. I don't care if it delays the flight 3 hours. Nobody flies with this crew." The scene that followed was chaotic, brutal, and entirely necessary. Lydia Cross went into crisis management mode. She got on her radio and barked orders that echoed through the terminal. I need a full reserve crew to Gate 42 immediately. Priority Alpha. I am grounding the current crew of Flight 902. Yes, you heard me. Pull them. Brenda began to cry. It wasn't a sympathetic cry. It was the ugly, panicked sobbing of someone who realizes their lifestyle is about to evaporate. Please, Mr. Caldwell, I have a mortgage. I didn't know. If I had known who you were. That's the problem, Brenda. Adrian cut her off, his voice quiet but carrying over her sobs. If you had known who I was, you would have treated me like a king. You only treat people with respect if you think they have power. That makes you dangerous in a service industry. You're done. Officer Kowalski and Officer Tate, realizing they had almost arrested the owner of the airline, awkwardly excused themselves, muttering apologies to Adrian and glaring at Brenda for wasting their time. Adrian stood on the jet bridge as the walk of shame happened in reverse. First, the captain came out of the cockpit. Captain Reynolds, a grey-haired man who had been hiding in the flight deck during the altercation, looked furious. But when Lydia Cross whispered in his ear, his fury turned to shock. He looked at Adrian, nodded once stiffly, and walked off the plane, dragging his flight bag. He knew the game was over. Then came Miller. He wouldn't look at Adrian. He stared at his shoes, his face bright red. Then Brenda. She was still sobbing, clutching her purse. She tried to stop in front of Adrian. "Sir, please give me a second chance." "Ms. Cross," Adrian said, looking at the station manager. "Please escort her to security. I want her badge deactivated before she leaves the airport." Lydia nodded to a security guard who had arrived. Brenda was gently but firmly led away, her wails echoing up the tunnel. The rest of the cabin crew followed, looking confused and terrified. They hadn't been directly involved, but they were collateral damage to the toxic environment Brenda had created. Within 10 minutes, the plane was empty of staff. The passengers on board were confused. The plane wasn't moving. The pilot was gone. The flight attendants were gone. And in seat 1A, Preston Hargrave was getting angry. Adrian took a deep breath. The adrenaline was fading, leaving him tired again. But he had one last piece of business to attend to. "Ms. Cross," Adrian said, "is the reserve crew inbound?" "Yes, sir. ETA 20 minutes. They're coming from the crew lounge in Terminal 2. "Good. When they get here, tell them I'll be in seat 1A. "Sir," Lydia asked. "Mr. Hargrave is still in seat 1A. Adrian adjusted his backpack. A small, wolfish smile touched his lips. "I know," Adrian said. "I'm going to go have a chat with him. I want you to come with me. Bring the manifest." Adrian walked back onto the plane. The atmosphere inside the cabin was tense. The passengers were murmuring, checking their watches. When Adrian walked in, still wearing his hoodie, still looking like a tired grad student, a few people in business class rolled their eyes. "Here comes the troublemaker again," their expressions said. Adrian walked straight to the first row. Preston Hargrave was on his phone, screaming at someone. "I don't care! The plane is sitting here! The crew just walked off! It's a strike or something! It's incompetent!" He looked up and saw Adrian. Hargrave's face turned a violent shade of purple. He dropped his phone. "You!" Hargrave roared. He unbuckled his seatbelt and tried to stand up, but the seatbelt caught, jerking him back down. "How the hell did you get back on? I told them to arrest you. Where is Brenda?" Adrian stood in the aisle, looking down at the billionaire. Lydia Cross stood right behind Adrian, holding her tablet like a shield. "Brenda isn't coming back, Preston," Adrian said. "Neither is the pilot." "What did you do?" Hargrave spat. "Did you threaten them? Is that it? I'm calling the FBI. This is terrorism." "I fired them," Adrian said simply. Hargrave blinked. He laughed, a harsh, incredulous sound. "You fired them. Who do you think you are? You're nobody. You're a bum in a sweatshirt." "Ms. Cross," Adrian said, without looking away from Hargrave. "Please inform Mr. Hargrave who I am." Lydia stepped forward. She cleared her throat. Her voice rang out clear in the silent cabin. Everyone, from row 1 to row 5, was listening. "Mr. Hargrave," Lydia said. "This is Mr. Adrian Caldwell. He is the CEO of Caldwell Logistics and the new majority owner of Stratton Airways. He is effectively the owner of this aircraft." The silence that followed was heavy. You could hear the hum of the air conditioning. Hargrave's mouth opened, but no sound came out. He looked at Adrian. He looked at the hoodie. He looked at the sneakers. "Bullshit," Hargrave whispered. Look at him." "Google me," Adrian suggested. Hargrave grabbed his phone. His thumbs fumbled on the screen. A few seconds passed. Hargrave's eyes widened. He saw the news articles from Tokyo. Caldwell Logistics acquires major stake in Stratton. He saw the photo of Adrian in a suit, shaking hands with Ray Stratton. Hargrave looked up. The color had drained from his face underneath the fake tan, leaving him looking pasty and old. I didn't know," Hargrave stammered. The bully was gone. In his place was a coward trying to calculate the damage. "Mr. Caldwell, Adrian, look, we got off on the wrong foot. It was a misunderstanding. I was stressed. My sciatica—" "Get out of my seat," Adrian said. He didn't shout. He didn't scream. He just said it with the weight of an eviction notice. "Now, wait a minute." Hargrave tried to smile, using his salesman charm. "We're both businessmen. We can work this out. I'm a Diamond Legacy member. I spend $500,000 a year with you guys." "Not anymore," Adrian said. He turned to Lydia. "Ms. Cross, revoke Mr. Hargrave's status, set his miles balance to 0, and ban him from Stratton Airways for life. Refund his ticket for today, and ban him from all future flights." "Done," Lydia said, tapping her tablet. "You can't do that," Hargrave shrieked. "I have 3 million miles." "You had 3 million miles," Adrian corrected. "Now you have a long walk to the taxi stand. Get off my plane." The dismantling of Preston Hargrave was a slow, painful spectacle. He tried to refuse. He tried to sit there and cross his arms like a child. But Lydia Cross called security back. The same security guards who had escorted Brenda away now marched down the aisle for Hargrave. "Sir, you are trespassing on a private aircraft," the lead guard said. "I'm not moving," Hargrave yelled, clutching the armrests. "I know lawyers. I'll sue this airline into the ground." "You can sue us," Adrian said, leaning against the galley wall, watching. "But you'll be suing me. And my legal team is bored, Preston. They'd love to tear apart your real estate portfolio. I know about the faulty wiring in your Brooklyn developments. Do you really want me to start digging?" Hargrave froze. The threat was specific. It hit home. Slowly, shakily, Preston Hargrave unbuckled his seatbelt. He stood up. He grabbed his Louis Vuitton bag. He had to walk past Adrian to get to the door. He stopped for a second, looking Adrian in the eye. "You ruined my trip." "You ruined it yourself," Adrian said. "You thought you could step on someone because they looked smaller than you. You were wrong." Hargrave walked down the aisle. As he passed business class, a young man in row 3 started clapping, then a woman in row 4. Within seconds, the entire front cabin was applauding. It wasn't polite applause. It was the jeering, celebratory applause of people who had watched a bully get punched in the nose. Hargrave kept his head down, rushing off the plane and into the terminal, disappearing into the rainy night. Adrian let out a long sigh. He rubbed his temples. "Ms. Cross," he said. "Yes, Mr. Caldwell?" "I'm sorry for the mess," Adrian said sincerely. "I know this is a nightmare for operations. The delay, the crew swap." "Sir?" Lydia said, smiling for the first time. "I've been wanting to fire Brenda for 3 years. She was a nightmare. And Hargrave made 2 of my gate agents cry last month. Honestly, best shift ever." Adrian chuckled. "Glad to hear it. Is the new crew here?" "They're coming down the bridge now." The new crew was breathless, having run from the other terminal. The new flight attendant, a woman named Sarah. Wait, checklist. Sarah is banned. Let's use Felicity. The new flight attendant, Felicity, looked nervous. She had been told she was flying the new owner of the airline. She walked in, spotting Adrian in the hoodie. "Mr. Caldwell?" she asked tentatively. "That's me," Adrian said. "Hi, Felicity." "Welcome aboard, sir. Can I get you anything?" Adrian looked at seat 1A. It was empty. The leather was still indented from where Hargrave had been sitting. "Actually," Adrian said, "I don't want seat 1A anymore." Lydia and Felicity looked confused. "Sir?" "It's got bad energy," Adrian said. He looked toward the back of the plane. "Is the flight full?" "We have 1 empty seat in economy," Lydia said, checking the tablet. "Row 34, middle seat, right by the toilets." Adrian smiled. He picked up his backpack. "Perfect," Adrian said. "I'll take it." "But, sir," Felicity stammered, "you own the plane. You can sit in first class." "I know," Adrian said, "but I just want to sleep. And honestly, I think I'd feel safer back there with the regular people." He walked past the stunning first-class suites. He walked past the business-class pods. He walked all the way down the long, narrow aisle of economy, nodding to the confused passengers. He found row 34. It was indeed a middle seat, squeezed between a teenager listening to loud music and a grandmother knitting a scarf. "Excuse me," Adrian said politely. The grandmother looked up. "Oh, hello, dear. Tight squeeze, isn't it?" "It's cozy," Adrian said. He shoved his backpack under the seat in front of him. He sat down, his knees hitting the plastic tray table. It was cramped. It smelled slightly of the lavatory. But as the new pilot came over the intercom, apologizing for the delay and announcing their departure for London, Adrian Caldwell closed his eyes and smiled. He had never been more comfortable in his life. The flight to London was uneventful. Adrian slept for 6 hours, his head resting awkwardly on the shoulder of the grandmother in 34B, who didn't seem to mind. But while Adrian was sleeping at 35,000 feet, the world below was waking up to the story. Remember the passengers recording on their phones? One of them, a tech blogger named Jason, who sat in row 2, had uploaded the entire confrontation to Twitter and TikTok before the plane doors even closed. The video was titled, "Airline CEO Goes Undercover, Gets Kicked Off by Karen Flight Attendant, Then Buys the Airline and Fires Everyone." It wasn't entirely accurate. He didn't buy it that second, but it was close enough for the internet. By the time Adrian's plane touched down at Heathrow, the video had 45 million views. Adrian turned on his phone in the taxi. It nearly exploded with notifications. He had 50 missed calls from Ray Stratton. He had emails from CNN, BBC, and TMZ. He opened Twitter. The hashtag Seat1A was trending worldwide, but the real story wasn't just about Adrian. It was about Preston Hargrave. The internet is a powerful detective agency. Within hours of the video going viral, users had identified Hargrave. And because Adrian had mentioned the faulty wiring in Brooklyn during his confrontation, the internet sleuths had gone digging. They found public records. They found lawsuits. They found tenants complaining about black mold and unsafe conditions in Hargrave's luxury buildings. By the time Adrian got to his hotel in London, the Karma train wasn't just hitting Hargrave, it was running him over. Adrian sat on the edge of his hotel bed, watching the news on the BBC. The anchor was serious. Breaking news in the financial world. Real estate mogul Preston Hargrave is under investigation by the New York Housing Authority this morning after allegations of fraud and safety violations surfaced following a viral incident at JFK Airport. The screen cut to footage of Hargrave trying to leave JFK. He wasn't smug anymore. He was running from paparazzi, covering his face with his jacket, looking small and pathetic. Adrian took a sip of water. He didn't feel glee. He didn't feel happy about destroying a man. He just felt a sense of balance. The phone rang. It was Ray Stratton. "Adrian," Ray shouted, "you're the most famous man on the planet right now. Our stock price is up 12%. "Why is the stock up?" Adrian asked, rubbing his eyes. "I just fired a whole crew and delayed a flight." "Because the public loves it," Ray laughed. "They love a CEO who sits in economy. They love a guy who stands up to bullies. We're branding it. Stratton Airways, we fly for you. It's genius." "I just wanted to sleep, Ray," Adrian said. "Well, wake up, partner, because we have a press conference in 2 hours via Zoom." "And Adrian?" "Yeah. Next time, just tell them who you are at the check-in desk, okay?" "No promises," Adrian said. 6 months had passed since the incident on Flight 902. The rain that had battered JFK that night had long since dried, but the storm Adrian Caldwell had unleashed was still raging, only now it was confined to the sterile, mahogany-paneled rooms of a Manhattan bankruptcy court. The internet moves fast. Usually, viral stars are forgotten in a week. But Preston Hargrave wasn't just a viral star. He was a symbol. The video of him screaming at Adrian had become the catalyst for a massive audit of his entire business empire. When the Department of Buildings and the IRS started digging, they didn't just find cracks in the foundation. They found that the entire house was built on sand. It was a Tuesday morning, crisp and bright. The grand ballroom of the Pierre Hotel had been converted into an auction house for the liquidation of Hargrave real estate holdings. The room was packed. Vultures in expensive suits were there to pick over the carcass of Hargrave's fortune. In the back row, wearing a simple navy sweater and reading a book, sat Adrian Caldwell. He hadn't announced his presence. He was just watching. At the front of the room, the auctioneer, a man with a voice like a machine gun, was selling off the jewel of Hargrave's crown, the Hargrave Tower in Brooklyn, the very building Adrian had mentioned during the confrontation on the plane, the one with the faulty wiring and the black mold. "We are opening the bidding at 12 million, the auctioneer rattled. "Do I hear 12? Hargrave was there. He sat in the front row, his head in his hands. He looked 20 years older. His fake tan was gone, leaving his skin sallow and grey. His suit was ill-fitting, likely because he had lost 30 pounds from stress. He wasn't the arrogant man in seat 1A anymore. He was a ruin. "Sold!" the auctioneer shouted, slamming his gavel. "To bidder number 402. Hargrave flinched at the sound of the gavel. It sounded just like the overhead bin slamming shut on the plane. The auction ended. The room began to clear. Hargrave stood up, his legs shaky. He turned around and froze. He saw Adrian walking down the center aisle. The room went quiet. The few people remaining recognized the dynamic. It was the rematch, but this time there were no flight attendants to interfere. "You," Hargrave rasped. His voice was thin, defeated. "Are you happy? You came to watch me die?" Adrian stopped a few feet away. He didn't look angry. He looked disappointed. "I didn't come to watch," Adrian said calmly. "I came to buy." Hargrave blinked, confused. "What?" "Bidder 402, Adrian said. "That's my holding company. I just bought your tower, Preston." Hargrave's eyes widened. A flicker of his old arrogance sparked, then died. "You bought it? Why? It's a money pit. The repairs alone will cost millions." "I know," Adrian said. But unlike you, I'm going to actually do the repairs. And then I'm going to convert the units into rent-controlled housing for the families you tried to evict last year." Hargrave stared at him, his mouth slightly open. The magnitude of the karma was suffocating. The man he had tried to kick out of a seat was now taking his building and giving it back to the people he had wronged. "I have nothing left," Hargrave whispered, tears welling in his eyes. "They took the penthouse. They took the cars. My wife left me. I'm staying in a motel in Queens." "It's a hard fall," Adrian acknowledged. "Can't you—" Hargrave hesitated, swallowing his pride. "Adrian, Mr. Caldwell, can't you help me? You have billions. Just a consultant job. Anything. I know the real estate market. Please, I'm begging you." It was a pathetic sight. The man who had sneered at Adrian's hoodie was now begging the man in the sweater for a lifeline. Adrian looked at Hargrave. He thought about the families who had lived in mouldy apartments because Hargrave wanted to save a few pennies. He thought about the way Hargrave had treated the flight crew before the tide turned. "Character is who you are in the dark, Preston," Adrian said softly. "But it's also who you are when you think you have the power. You showed me who you are. I can't hire a man who treats people like furniture." "I've changed," Hargrave pleaded. "Maybe," Adrian said, turning to walk away. "But you'll have to prove that on your own climb back up. I'm not carrying you." Adrian walked out of the ballroom, leaving Hargrave standing alone in the empty hall. Outside, the air was fresh. Adrian checked his phone. He had an email from Lydia Cross. Subject: monthly report message. Customer satisfaction is up 40%. The new respect policy for cabin crew is working wonders. Also, thought you should know. Brenda applied for a job at the airport coffee shop yesterday. The manager recognized her from the viral video. She didn't get the job. Adrian didn't smile at that. He just deleted the email. He didn't take pleasure in Brenda's struggle, but he believed in consequences. She would learn, eventually. Or she wouldn't. That was her journey now. He hailed a cab. "JFK, please," Adrian said. "Which terminal?" the driver asked. "Terminal 4, Stratton Airways." When he arrived, the vibe at the check-in counters was different. The staff seemed lighter, happier. They weren't walking on eggshells. They knew their boss had their back, but they also knew he was watching. Adrian walked up to the kiosk. He didn't go to the VIP counter. He went to the economy line. He printed his boarding pass. Gate 42, seat 1A. He looked at the ticket. He had booked it intentionally this time. He boarded the plane. The flight attendant, a young man named David, greeted him with a genuine smile. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Caldwell. Can I hang your jacket?" "No thanks, David," Adrian said. "I'm good." He sat in seat 1A. He stretched his legs out. He looked out the window at the tarmac, watching the baggage handlers load the cargo in the rain. He pulled his hoodie up. He put his noise-cancelling headphones on. A moment later, a passenger boarded, a frantic-looking businessman in a suit, sweating, dragging a heavy bag. He stopped at row 1, looking at his ticket, then at the empty seat next to Adrian in 1B. The businessman looked at Adrian. He saw the hoodie. He saw the sneakers. "Excuse me," the businessman said, his tone bordering on rude. "Can you move your elbow? You're crowding my space." Adrian slowly peeled back one ear cup. He looked at the man. For a second, the businessman looked ready to argue. He looked ready to call a flight attendant. He looked ready to ask if Adrian really belonged in first class. But then, he stopped. Maybe he recognized the glasses. Maybe he recognized the stillness in Adrian's eyes. Or maybe, just maybe, he felt the ghost of Preston Hargrave lingering in the cabin, a warning from the universe. The businessman cleared his throat, his demeanor changing instantly. I mean, sorry to disturb you, the businessman stammered. Long day. You know how it is. Adrian smiled. It was a genuine, warm smile. I know exactly how it is, Adrian said. Take a seat. We're all going to the same place. The plane pushed back from the gate, the engines humming a low, powerful note. Adrian closed his eyes, finally at peace. The cabin was quiet. The system was corrected, and the man in the hoodie drifted off to sleep, knowing that sometimes the most powerful move you can make is to sit still and let the world reveal itself. Adrian Caldwell didn't just buy an airline that night, he bought a lesson for the rest of us. We live in a world obsessed with status, with the VIP label, and with the appearance of power. But as Preston Hargrave found out, true power isn't about the seat you sit in or the suit you wear. It's about how you treat the people who can do absolutely nothing for you. Preston thought he was untouchable because he had a platinum card. Brenda thought she was secure because she sided with the bully. But both of them forgot the golden rule of the skies. Turbulence hits everyone eventually. And when it does, it doesn't matter if you're in 1A or 34B. What matters is who is willing to help you when you land. So, the next time you see someone quiet in the corner, wearing a hoodie and keeping to themselves, maybe show a little respect. You never know. They might just own the plane. If you enjoyed this story of instant karma and justice served cold, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss a story. And tell me in the comments, have you ever seen a VIP get humbled in real life? I want to hear your stories. Thanks for watching, and fly safe.